There I am. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Daily Face-Off DFS show. I'm Brock Seguin. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. It's a little bit of the Mondays going on here, so sorry about the delay and all that, but we're ready to go here. So if you're new to the show, just to let you know, everything you see here in this Google Sheets document can be available to you by joining DFO Premium. You can do that for as little as $9.99 for a week and all that good stuff. But yeah, anyways, I'm not going to talk too much about that. I hope everyone had a good Easter weekend with their family, spent some time. I know I'm feeling the effects of it a little bit today. Went a little too hard on the spike ball court yesterday and definitely not feeling my best. Yeah, viewer count looks a little low today, but that's probably because Periscope is no longer with us, so no Twitter feed. So thank you guys all for tuning in on YouTube. Please hit that like button since I know that you're all on YouTube this time. So please smash that like button if you're enjoying the show. Yeah, so 7-game slate for today's Monday. Pretty interesting slate. A lot of the lines that we've kind of been touting here over the last, couple months or whatever are starting to get hot. They're starting to go off a little bit. So hopefully that continues into tonight. Hopefully those lines continue to have success and we can all win some cash. But just before I get right into it, I just want to remind you that today's show is brought to you by our friends at Jock Market. Jock Market is DFS meets the stock exchange. Super cool. Unfortunately, still not available in Canada as of now, but if you are an American viewer or a viewer from another country where it is available, check out Jock Market. But let's get into tonight's 7-game slate, starting with the goaltenders. So Tuukka Rask and Yaroslav Halak. Halak was added to the COVID-19 reserve list today, both unavailable. So Daniel of later will start for the Bruins. Brian Elliott confirmed for the Flyers. Elliott will start tonight. Carter Hart will go tomorrow. Winnipeg has Connor Hellebuck going for them. Unclear who starts for the Senators. Matt Murray was activated prior to the last game, did not play. Could be in tonight. They've got a number of goalies. Forsberg, Gustafsson, they both played fairly well. So any of the three realistically could start for them tonight. The Montreal Canadiens will turn to Carey Price. Mike Smith goes for the Edmonton Oilers. The Blues will go with Ville Husso for the second straight game. Really strong performance for him in Colorado. So giving him another look. And then Robin Lehner was the first goalie off the ice this morning for the Golden Knights. Cam Talbot confirmed for the Minnesota Wild, countered by Philip Grubauer for the Colorado Avalanche. For the Flames, they will go to Jakob Markstrom on the tail end of a back-to-back. We're expecting to see Jack Campbell for the Maple Leafs, considering it's back-to-back. Hutchinson started yesterday, but we didn't really get any concrete information. He was in the starters crease this morning, but they didn't really say anything. So I was a little bit iffy to even put a likely tag on him just because they've been so cautious with him. I'm not really sure what's going on in Toronto, but expect to see Jack Campbell. The unfortunate thing is if you plug him into your lineups and it doesn't end up being him, you're pretty much screwed at that point. You basically have to turn to either whoever's starting for the Leafs or Peterson or Aiden Hill at that point. But yeah, speaking of Peterson, he's expected to go, but again, unconfirmed for the Kings. Aiden Hill confirmed to start on a second of a back-to-back for the Coyotes at 7,600. So let's get right into today's slate. And if you guys have any questions as we go, feel free to drop them in the comment section. I will get to them as I go. We got a comment already that says, can't believe Boston doesn't have higher scores. Philly has been trashed. Yeah, and we're going to kind of get into why that is. And I do still like the Bruins tonight, but overall their numbers don't look quite as good as you probably were expecting coming over to the show, but we'll get into why that is. Alexander says Stahl for the Habs is amazing value. Yes, absolutely. I really like that line tonight. We'll get into that as well. But let's start up top with the Bruins and the Flyers. So yeah, Boston won slightly above average. The only one with a positive 5v5 score tonight. But let's find out why. So in terms of the matchups in this game, we're going to see basically Boston 1 going up against Philadelphia 1 primarily, a little bit of Philadelphia 2 as well. Boston 2 will see the second and third lines of the Flyers. Boston 3 will see a similar matchup, pick up the rest of the scraps for Philly 1 that Boston 1 doesn't handle. Also, same goes for Philly 2 and 4. So, pretty easy game to break down here from a matchup perspective. So we'll start up top with the Bruins top line. If you miss it over the weekend, they broke up the perfection line. It is now David Pastrnak playing on the second line with Nick Ritchie and David Krejci. Craig Smith goes up to the top line. So The reason why they don't look that great is overall, the Flyers are a pretty good defensive team at 5v5. All four lines grade out positively, which means they're above average defensively on tonight's slate. On the other side, without having Bergeron, Pastrnak, and Marchand together, the numbers have not been all that great. Boston won just slightly above average with Craig Smith on that line as opposed to David Pastrnak. And then the second line is actually below average even with Pastrnak on that line. So overall, the numbers have not been, at least the underlying numbers haven't been crazy impressive when they break up that top line. But they do need to find some secondary scoring. And it's not like they're bad. I mean, they both have above average positive Corsi fours, both have positive expected goal for rates, not, anything that's super impressive, but, solid nonetheless. So, in this game, I do still like Boston 1 and 2. They didn't grade out well over the weekend, and I played them, and they were amazing still. So the reason why I do like them still is because it makes them just so much easier to play, right? So with the top line, you got Marchand and Bergeron 79 and 7,700, still expensive, but Craig Smith at 3,900. They're only 19,500 a full stack, so it makes them very affordable. And then the second line is 17,500 to full stack with Richie at 4,600, Krejci at 3,900, Pastrnak at 9,000. So it's a little bit more difficult, or a little bit easier, I should say, to stack these lines. Just kind of picking the right one. So to me, they're both about the same. I think that Boston 1 probably has better upside. I loved Craig Smith even when he was on the second line because of his shot volume. So I do like Boston 1 a little bit more. But if you need a little bit of salary relief, there's no fault in going down to Boston 2, a little bit cheaper, probably a little bit less ownership. Nick Ritchie's been rock solid all season long, still in the top power play unit. Krejci under 4,000 is criminal, especially centering the line with David Pastrnak. So it's not like the Flyers have been outstanding, right? They've struggled. They've had their struggles defensively recently. Brian Elliott is, he's got an 888 save percentage on the season. So even though the numbers don't scream like play the Bruins tonight, I do think that this is a pretty good spot for them. The other thing that's really working well in their favor for this slate is that, you've got Colorado 1, you've got, Connor McDavid, you've got Austin Matthews, you've got all these other huge names on the slate. So maybe Boston will go a little bit undervalued tonight. So I do like them quite a bit. On the other side, I don't really love the Flyers tonight. Not, all four of their lines from an offensive perspective grade out below average right now. And the Bruins are pretty solid defensively. So I don't love the Flyers on such a busy slate. As I mentioned, there's tons of other big names on the slate. And this, Daniel Vlader's played extremely well, 929 save percentage, obviously very limited action. It's only his 4th career start, but he's been rock steady. So I do like Boston 1 and Boston 2 tonight quite a bit, especially if I'm going to get them at a little bit lower ownership. And then overall, in terms of the price, they are the 4th and 6th most expensive options on the entire slate. So you're not breaking the bank by playing either one of them. So I do like Boston 1 and 2, even though they don't grade out that great. Just the way that the pricing works out by playing them, it's really, really nice value. How often can you get David Pastrnak's center for 3,900, right? Like, it never happens. It's incredible value. So even though the underlying numbers aren't great in terms of the actual value, it's tremendous. So and then again, just to quickly look at the power play report, Boston actually grades out slightly below average on the power play tonight. Their power play has not been very good all season long, but the Flyers do have a below average penalty kill, so there is an opportunity there for the Bruins tonight. But still, in the grand scheme of tonight's slate, slightly below average. All right, second game, we've got Ottawa and Winnipeg. Ottawa 1 actually grades out as the best play in this game. That is Brady Tkachuk. That is Josh Norris. That is Nick Paul. I think it might be a little bit overblown, their numbers here. It's strictly because Winnipeg is not very good defensively at 5v5, but we'll talk about that here in a second. Winnipeg 1 looks really, really solid. Winnipeg 2 looks okay. Ottawa 2 looks okay as well. But based on the matchups, we're going to see Winnipeg 1 is basically going to go up against the middle 6 of the Senators. It's going to be basically the middle 6. The top 6 of the Jets will go against the middle 6 of the Senators, and it's basically a hard match, the Adam Lowry line against the Brady Tkachuk line. So, that'll be a big physical matchup between those two lines, but it frees up Winnipeg 1 and 2 a little bit. Ottawa 1, we'll start there just because they look, they graded out so well. Their offense numbers are pretty solid. 30 scoring chances for, 16 high danger, really, really nice numbers from them. And then they're going to go up against Winnipeg 3, who rock a really, really brutal 40% Corsi for, a 37 expected goals for percentage, terrible line, all things considered. 29 scoring chances, 12 high danger against. They've just been getting caved in all season, likely due to the matchups they see on a regular basis. But this looks like a pretty good matchup for Ottawa. One, you're going to get them at next to nothing in terms of ownership. Nobody shoots more than Brady Tkachuk. So I think that more than anything, I just like Brady Tkachuk maybe as a one-off. I don't love like Nick Paul up there. Norris is fine too because they're both on the top power play unit. So I think Norris is okay if you want to go a Tkachuk Norris mini. I think that's okay. More than anything, though, I just kind of like this matchup for Brady Tkachuk. While the 5v5 numbers look really good because Winnipeg is not very good defensively, they still have to try to beat Connor Hellebuck, right? So overall, it's not the greatest matchup, but it's definitely pretty solid on paper. So I think there is some merit to playing a little bit of Ottawa 1, specifically just Brady Tkachuk. On the other side, really no interest in Winnipeg 2 now that Kyle Connor and Nick Ehlers are both on the top line with Mark Scheifele. Basically all you want is on that top line. Connor's got some of the best shot volume in the league, second to probably Brady Tkachuk. Ehlers is having a tremendous season, and Mark Scheifele is obviously one of the best players that the Jets have to offer. So all three of them playing together on the top line. Like I said, they're going to see the middle six of the Senators' second line. It struggles mightily defensively. It's their worst defensive line, giving up 29 scoring chances against, 13 high danger. The third line is still below average. They're a little bit better, but they still aren't great. Only a 46% Corsi for, so they get caved in pretty regularly as well. So it looks like a really, really good matchup for Winnipeg 1. Again, I don't know what their ownership is going to look like, but I would expect it to be still relatively lower than it should be because of the McDavids, the Matthews, the McKinnons all on this slate. So I think that this is a really nice spot for Winnipeg 1. If everyone's still paying up for those bigger names, I think Winnipeg 1 could fly under the radar tonight, and they might have the best matchup of all of those big lines. So they're among my favorite lines tonight for sure. But I really wouldn't look elsewhere. With the Jets, I mean, Pierre-Luc Dubois had big games, but most of them have come with Connor and Ehlers on his wing. So that's probably as far as I'd go into that one. In terms of the power play report, both teams slightly below average, but both teams have pretty bad penalty kills. So there's an opportunity for both teams here on the power play tonight. All right, third game of the night, we've got Montreal and Edmonton. McDavid and Leon are broken up again. So it's going to be Nugent Hopkins. It's going to be McDavid and Puljujarvi. And then on the second line, we've got Kahun, Draisaitl, Yamamoto together. Alexander mentioned that Eric Stahl will be making his Canadiens debut, and that is the case. It's really hard to determine. I think more than any other team in the league, it's really hard to nail down exactly how the ice time is going to be doled out amongst this top 9. Even more so now with Eric Stahl in the mix. Even today, they had this listed technically as their second line, but routinely the Nick Suzuki line plays among the most minutes on this team. So I usually just still at least put them sometimes first, sometimes second. It's kind of a fluid situation, but a really nice spot for Eric Stahl here in his debut. He's minimum priced on DraftKings at $2,500. The really nice thing about Montreal 3, all three of them are together on the top power play unit with Nick Suzuki and Shea Weber. So Montreal 3 looks like tremendous value tonight. I'm sure they will be among the more popular value plays, but they still aren't going to be that popular because you can't easily fit them with the top lines just because Tyler Toffoli is still super expensive at $6,700. But tremendous value for Eric Stahl. I really like Montreal 3 tonight. Overall, their 5v5 score isn't that great, but that's just because we're projecting them for pretty modest minutes tonight. But if they have success early on, I could see them playing a ton tonight. But let's take a look at the matchups. So we're going to see a lot of the Danault line against the McDavid line. So that's going to be difficult for McDavid. Specifically, this Danault line, I've talked about it on the show a lot, that their underlying numbers are amazing. They don't always score at that rate. But Danault has kind of taken his game to another level recently. Pretty slow start, at least offensively. And that line's playing even better now than they have been at any point in the season. So it's never an easy matchup going into Montreal. Obviously, the Senators just put up, 5 or 6 the other night. So it is still doable. Carey Price hasn't been that great throughout the season. But, I mean, if you're looking for a reason to fade Edmonton won. This matchup isn't great. The Canadians, I don't know if they give up the least goals against at 5v5, but if it's not the least, it's next to the least. They're a very stingy, very good 5v5 team, and as long as they stay out of the penalty box, they're a very good team. The problem is they get into penalty trouble very frequently. The most penalties against per game on this entire slate, and their penalty kill is a disaster. So if they get into penalty trouble against Edmonton tonight, Edmonton 1 is going to go off. If they can stay out of the box, Edmonton 1 could have a pretty quiet night. So it's a bit of an interesting situation. I've mentioned before that I don't play Edmonton 2. They're just not very good. Overall, their numbers are pretty brutal. They are well below average on tonight's slate. Meanwhile, Edmonton 1 pretty good, among the best lines on the entire slate. Officially the 5th best offensive numbers on the slate. So Edmonton 1 looks really good, but this matchup with Montreal 1 and Montreal, I think 2, right? Yeah, Montreal 1 and 2 is not very good. Both lines above average. Montreal 1 well above average defensively. So it's not a great matchup, but it is just going to boil down to how disciplined the Canadians are tonight. If they can stay out of the box, Edmonton 1's going to have a quiet night. If they get into penalty trouble, they're going to go ballistic still. So I don't really have a whole lot of interest in Montreal 1 or 2 because they're still going to be in a difficult matchup with Edmonton's top line. I think that it's not going to be it's tough. Like Josh Anderson not getting any power play time now that Eric Stahl's there. Corey Perry on that second line. It's really hard to have a lot of interest in that Nick Suzuki line, even though they're going to see their fair share of the Leon Draisaitl line. But if you are going to play them, I think it's okay. They're going to be at next to no ownership because everyone's going to just flock to Montreal 3, I would imagine, just because of the value. So you'll get Montreal 2 at really low ownership, and they do have a nice matchup with that Draisaitl line. So at 5v5, there's plenty to like there, but they're just more expensive, right? I mean, actually, they're cheaper, but that's to full stack them with Perry at 2,700. If you're leaving Perry off and just playing Suzuki and Anderson, it is pretty good value at 4,600, 4,900. They're super cheap. The matchup is solid when they're going to be out there against Leon Draisaitl. But again, that is only 27% of the time. The other 62% of the time, they're going to be going up against Edmonton 1 and Edmonton 3, which are not that great of matchups. So it is a bit of a risky play, but they're going to be at super low ownership tonight. Meanwhile, and Montreal 3, we have them pegged at about 26% of the expected 5-5 ice time for the Canadian tonight, but that's just based on kind of what they were doing with Kotkaniemi. If they want to give Eric Stahl a little bit more run, especially if they get off to a nice start, then that could go up and that'll boost their overall value. But obviously, this number, it's very difficult to get a concrete number because it's Eric Stahl's first game. But what Drouin and Toffoli have done together, some of this is with Nick Suzuki, some of this is with Kotkaniemi. Overall, it's been pretty good. I would expect Stahl to fit in between them pretty seamlessly. And then they've got a pretty nice matchup. Montreal 3 is going to see a little bit of the top 9, but mostly they're going up against Edmonton 4 most of the night, which is the Jujar Kyra line, which has not been all that great. They're below average. They're not terrible, but they like in terms of the actual scoring chances they give up, but in terms of the actual puck possession, they get absolutely crushed. 38% Corsi 4 is horrendous. So this is a prime matchup for Montreal 3 tonight. And again, they all correlate together on the top power play unit. And again, going back to the power play, Montreal has a brutal penalty kill, but Edmonton's is actually worse. So if they get any power play opportunities tonight, then Montreal 3 should have an even better evening. Graham asks, is Montreal 3 the new Colorado 3? I mean, tonight, I think so a little bit, but again, like you still are paying up for Tyler Toffoli, so they're not quite like $9,000 like Colorado 3 was, but tonight they look like absolutely tremendous value, but I'm not alone in thinking that either. Michael says you can use Boston 2 with Montreal 3 and have some money left over for mid-price D and also be contrarian. Yeah, I really, really like that option tonight. You can play them even with Boston 1. Obviously, you're not going to have as much money left over, but yeah, you can build a very balanced lineup with Boston 2 and Montreal 3, and they both look solid tonight. But there's a lot of those really mid-price lines that look solid tonight, Montreal 3 being one of them. Dan S says, pick one, Matthews, Marner, McKinnon, Rantanen, McDavid, Nugent, Hopkins. We'll get into that. I'm assuming when I get to the other games. My favorite of the 3 is probably Matthews and Marner tonight. They just look like they've got the best matchup. McKinnon's line could be have a tough time tonight, a little bit tougher time than normal with Joel Eriksson Ek. And then again, McDavid and Nugent Hopkins, they're going to have to rely on their 5v5 or on their power play production tonight, it looks like. So overall, I think that Matthews and Marner is probably the best play on tonight's slate. But I will continue to break these games down, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. All right, so I think fourth game of the night, we've got the Blues and the Golden Knights. So pretty interesting development. Ville Husso did look really, really good the other night. But overall, he's got a save percentage under 900 on the season. So it looks like a pretty good opportunity here for the Golden Knights, but they've been reeling as of late. So, if they continue to struggle, Ville Husso might not be a terrible play. The Blues, full blender mode this morning. Mike Hoffman up with Ryan O'Reilly and David Perron. Jaden Schwartz, Shannon Kyrou reunited, a line that I loved early in the season. They were absolutely popping. So reuniting them could be provide a spark that the Blues need. And then Vladimir Tarasenko drops down to the third line with Robert Thomas and Barbashev. I do like the Robert Thomas, Vladimir Tarasenko combination. It's just kind of unfortunate it comes on the third line. You'd imagine that's going to come at a minute's cost. So, it would be nice to see them play a little bit more of an expanded offensive role. But on the third line, it's tough to really project a ton of minutes for them tonight. I'm tired of playing McD every time. I play him, he gets 3 points. I wouldn't play him if it was a one-game slate. I mean, that's a pretty tough stance. But they are in a bit of a cold stretch right now. But it's hard to keep him down for long. So it is a tough matchup, though, for sure tonight. So St. Louis 2 grades out as the best line to target in this game. Vegas 2, one of my favorites, night in and night out, grades out as the second best. The rest of the lines don't look all that great. So in terms of the matchups for this game, St. Louis 1, which is the Ryan O'Reilly line, is expected to see about 45% of his ice time against Vegas 1. So a bit of a hard match, nothing crazy. Mostly it's going to be just the O'Reilly and the Shen lines will go head to head with the with the Max Pacioretty line. The middle six will get a little bit more of the William Karlsson line. And then it's tough to really know what to say about St. Louis in this situation. So obviously St. Louis 2, their numbers were ridiculous, but this is all from earlier in the year. So it's really tough to say, like, okay, now Shen, Schwartz, who have been struggling, get Kyrou back in their wing, and they're just going to magically start putting up 38 scoring chances, 4/60 again, like they were earlier in the year. It's tough to really buy into that. I memean, these are their numbers together this year, but I would probably knock these down a little bit because they haven't been playing that great. So, it's just, I think that they look pretty solid, but I'm having a tough time. The one good thing is it's not going to come at very expensive cost to try and take the gamble on them in this situation and hope that they can rekindle that, because to full stack them, it's only $13,000. So I think they are worth a dart throw if you're building multiple lineups. I think they're definitely worth it tonight. Vegas is having a tough time lately, so maybe rekindling or getting them back together can rekindle some of their early season magic and spark this Blues offense. But most of my interest goes back to Vegas too. They continue to be underpriced, $14,000 to full stack them. They've been outstanding, much better than the Pacioretty line, especially when Chandler Stevenson is out of the lineup. So no reason to pay up for Vegas 1 tonight, in my opinion, especially because they're going to be in a very difficult matchup with the Blues top 6. But as I mentioned, Vegas 2 is going to see much more of the third line, which is the Thomas and Tarasenko line, which has not been nearly as good defensively. 31 scoring chances, again, 13 high danger. So looks like a much better matchup for Vegas 2, and they're their best offensive line going right now. So Vegas 2 looks really, really solid, very reasonably priced as well. They have made a little bit of a change to their power play units. They've got Max Pacioretty back up on that top unit, which makes a lot more sense to me, but it does come at the cost of Riley Smith. So Marchessault and Karlsson still in the top unit, which is great. Alex Pietrangelo is now on that top unit as well. So a total change up for them last game. The other thing, if you want to play the narrative, it is Alex Pietrangelo's return to St. Louis. I believe he was injured the first time they went to St. Louis, so this is technically his return. If you want to play that narrative, that's great. I believe he is the most expensive defenseman on the entire slate. Yes, he is, $6,500. But if you want to leave, Riley Smith off and just go Karlsson, Marchessault, Pietrangelo, that's fine. Smith is super cheap, though. I think just $3,800. So, including him definitely provides a little bit, 3,600 even better, provides you with some nice salary relief as well. So full stacking them with Pietrangelo looks like a really nice play. And, even though Pietrangelo is the most expensive blue liner on the slate, you get Vegas too at a very nice price. It's really not hard to fit Pietrangelo in with them. But as I mentioned, St. Louis too, if you want to take the dart throw at $13,000 to full stack, I think they're worth it. And then you just got to kind of hope that they find some of that early season magic again. Shen still has pretty good shot volume overall, but Kyrou has not been the same player since leaving that top line. Obviously, he's had a couple big games. And then again, I pretty much never play Ryan O'Reilly. That line, has had their days. They pick up like 1 point every game. They never really break a slate. And it seems whatever line Mike Hoffman plays on, it just drags them down. His 5v5 numbers this year are a nightmare. So no interest really there. And then, no use paying up for Vegas 1 when you've got Vegas 2 so much cheaper. So that's that for that game. Fifth game of the night, Minnesota and Colorado. So Minnesota looks really good again here, at least, in the last couple of games. They finally, I don't think it comes as much of a coincidence. They start to give more minutes to Joel Eriksson Ek and they start playing better. He seems to be the guy that really gets things going for them. Jordan Greenway, Eriksson Ek, and Kaprizov. It's very helpful for Kaprizov as well. But they're going to be in a tough matchup tonight. Them and Colorado won both grade out as the top lines in this game, but it's going to be difficult. It's going to be head to head. The Eriksson Ek line against the McKinnon line pretty much the entire night. So it's going to be difficult for that Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek line to get anything going. But conversely, it's going to be relatively difficult for Colorado 1 as well. Eriksson Ek's one of the best two-way centers in the league. With Kaprizov, the numbers haven't been quite as good defensively. They are slightly above average defensively. So it's still a pretty decent matchup for Colorado 1. But this might not be like the surefire go to them and smash spot opportunity for Colorado 1. It is a little bit of a tougher matchup. Cam Talbot's playing unbelievable right now. So again, with McDavid, there's a reason to fade them tonight with a tough matchup with Montreal. And I think there is a little bit of merit to fading Colorado 1 as well. It's never a fun feeling. It sucks to fade those guys because they can just crush you and ruin your whole night. But the matchup at least isn't, if there's a chance to fade them tonight's not a bad opportunity. Again, though, they still look really good. I don't suggest it, but it isn't the greatest matchup. So, Colorado 2 is going to see quite a bit of Minnesota 3, which is Minnesota's, worst defensive line among their top 6. Then Colorado 3 is going to see a little bit more of the second line, which is a little bit better defensively than Minnesota 3. But I think I would still go to Colorado 3 as opposed to Colorado 2. You still get them at a ridiculously cheap price, just $3,100 for Nichushkin, $2,700 for Yost, $4,800 for Donskoy. So Colorado 1, 2, and 3 are all okay options tonight. I still like the value you get in Colorado 3, but I feel like this isn't going to be too crazy of a high-scoring game. And then just real no interest in the Minnesota side of things. It's pretty wild if you look at the best defensive lines on this slate. Colorado 1, Colorado 2, Colorado 3, Colorado 4. The 4 best defensive lines on the entire slate. They're an absolute monster at 5v5. So it's tough to really get behind a Minnesota team that, a lot of their lines grade out near the worst offensive lines. They're not a high-scoring team, and it's a terrible matchup. So I guess basically you just got to hope that you can fade this game as a whole, and it lives up to its low-scoring expectations is kind of what I'm saying. So, that looks, Colorado 1 and 3, best offensive lines on the slate. So it obviously is a little bit risky to fade them, but I think you might be able to get away with it tonight. You find with the Leafs on a back-to-back. I'd be more worried if they were playing a team that wasn't on a back-to-back, but it's a back-to-back against each other. So they're both going to be fatigued, and Calgary is not very good. How does Talbot look in your goalie stats? If I'm fading Colorado, I'm probably going all out and pick a goalie from that game. So Talbot actually looks pretty solid in terms of the goalies tonight. Not great, but there's not a whole lot of value on this slate. He is still near the bottom. Vegas is not a fan, still likes them to win that game, even if it is relatively low scoring. But no one is going to see more shot volume than him, or at least projected shot volume tonight. So Cam Talbot looks, not great. but where did he? Oh, sorry, he did move up. I don't know what I was sorting by there, but he's above average, I guess I should say. And Mike Smith looks solid at 7,400, but the best value does look to be Talbot. I don't know what I was sorted by there. That was bizarre. It was by odds. So yeah, Talbot is the 8th best goalie out of 14, so not terrible for $7,200. So yeah, I mean, if you're fading Colorado 1 completely, or Colorado completely, then yeah, go all in with Talbot. I think that's a fine option. It's a scary one, but it's definitely one that can win you a lot of money if it pays off. And then yeah, Carter. Oh, this is Brian Elliott now, but you know what I mean. The rest of the value goalies don't look all that great, so I think it's worth a shot. But all right, let's go back now to the Flames and the Maple Leafs. So Toronto 1, the top line in this game. Toronto 2, the second. Calgary does not look good. And the matchups in this game, it's basically going to be the top line, which is the Lindholm line going up against Matthews. The second line, which is the Monahan line going up against Tavares. And then the bottom 6 is just duking it out. So very easy game for us to break down. Overall, the top line, for whatever reason with Dylan Dubé up there, they have not been getting anything going. They grade out pretty brutal, below average. Defensively, they're okay, slightly above average. So not the greatest matchup for Toronto 1, but not the worst either. Toronto 1 looks solid with Hyman on that top line. They produced very, very impressive offensive numbers. 37 scoring chances, 4 per 60, 17 high danger. Very good numbers from them. So they look solid. It's kind of a theme with the top line tonight. None of them really have great matchups, but they're all matchup proof, right? So they can all still go off. But I do, I keep going back to Toronto too. They really, they paid off for me last night. Finally, they had a huge game, which was nice. They got me some solid cash last night, but overall, they've been relatively disappointing. But I love them again tonight. So I don't even care. I'm going back to Toronto too. Their offensive numbers. So these numbers don't quite account for Galchenyuk yet. They don't have a big enough sample size to really include it because it would just skew everything. But the small sample size with Galchenyuk, Nylander, Tavares is insane. They're averaging over 40 scoring chances, 4 per 60. I think 19 high danger. Their Corsi 4 is like 65. So they're just insane. Like with Galchenyuk, they've been outstanding. And this is a great matchup. I mean, that Monahan line has struggled all year round. The defensive numbers aren't terrible, but the 46.6 Corsi 4 is brutal. So Toronto 2 should be able to hem them in tonight. In the game last night, the Flames top line top 6 did an okay job versus the Maple Leafs top 6, but not like they limited them a little bit, but not enough. And at 5v5, the highest expected goals for in last night's game did come from Toronto 2. So I do like going back to them. It is a better matchup than what Toronto 1 has at a much cheaper price. And I hate to keep going back to the well, but they look outstanding again tonight, and hopefully they can go off again tonight like they did last night. Galchenyuk still just 3,100, Tavares 5,700, Nylander 5,400. So they're $8,000, over $8,000 cheaper to full stack than Toronto 1. So it just makes a lot more sense to me than paying up for the big guys. I think that they're, it's scary, but there is a case to fading Edmonton 1, Colorado 1, and Toronto 1 and tonight. And there's, you can't usually say that on a slate. They all have pretty difficult matchups at 5v5. Dustin said knew you were going Toronto 2. They just make too much sense. And they finally paid off for me last night. And I showed tons of faith in San Jose 2. I kept going back to San Jose 2. They finally had their big game, followed it up with a dud. But these lines have good numbers for a reason. And it's only a matter of time before they get a couple bounces and get things going their way. I mean, we can't just talk about Toronto 2 like they're just a second line, right? I mean, it's John Tavares and William Nylander. So with Galchenyuk up there, the numbers have been outstanding. And, going solely by the numbers, they're in a really good spot against that Monahan line tonight. Vinny says, where is this offense defense page on rise or fall? I have no idea what that means. If you want to clarify what you mean, I will be happy to answer, but I'm not entirely sure what you mean there. Going back to the power play, which I've kind of glossed over it here for a little bit. Again, obviously Edmonton has the massive advantage on the power play. So like I mentioned, if Montreal gets into penalty trouble, then Edmonton 1 could go nuts. Vegas, pretty nice advantage on the power play as well tonight. The Blues penalty kill has not been very good, so and they're not a very disciplined team either. So it looks like a decent opportunity for Vegas too. Like I mentioned earlier, playing them with Pietrangelo looks solid. Colorado, slightly above average. They draw more penalties than anybody. The Wild, not very disciplined. The Colorado power play is great, but the Flames have the second best penalty kill on this entire slate. So again, just another reason why it might be not a bad idea to fade Colorado tonight. I'm not saying 100% to it, but there's merit there. And then similar stuff for the Maple Leafs. Their power play is, really solid in terms of underlying numbers, best on the slate in terms of underlying numbers, but they have been struggling a little bit as of late. And the Flames penalty kills pretty much right around average. Not bad, not terrible though. So not a whole lot to love about Toronto in that spot, but at 5v5, they look like they got a pretty sizable advantage. And then both LA and Arizona below average on the power play tonight. But in terms of 5v5 numbers for this final game, Arizona 1 grades out pretty solid. LA 1 not too bad. So the Coyotes, just, again, another team that just went full blender mode recently. But it was for the better this time. Their lines didn't make a whole lot of sense in recent games. Nick Schmaltz was playing on the fourth line or third line or whatever you want to call it, but he was in the bottom six. Now he's back up with Connor Garland. They've had a lot of success together. Dvorak is now between Keller and Kessel as opposed to having Kessel play with Johan Larsson, who should be your shutdown center, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. These lines make a lot more sense to me. So, and it should help. I really do like Arizona 1 quite a bit tonight. They're going to go head-to-head basically with the Kopitar line, which obviously isn't the greatest matchup we've talked about. But the Kopitar line, for all their praise, they really are, pretty average. They're very mediocre. They're more boring than anything. They're slightly above average defensively and slightly below average offensively. So they're about as mediocre and as boring as you can get. They do suck the fun out of the game a little bit, but I would say that definitely caps Arizona 1's upside tonight, but they're not really like a super high upside play. What you're playing Arizona 1 for is the value, 12,400. You get Michael Bunting, who's come in and he's put up really good AHL numbers throughout his career. He's come up and he's had some success with Arizona in his first, I think, 3 games with them. Nick Schmaltz, spending some time in the bottom 6, has dropped his price all the way down to 3,900. So you get really, really good value out of them. Connor Garland, 6,000. You do get Schmaltz and Garland on the top power play unit together, which is nice. So I just like them for the value. The matchup's not great, but Garland and Schmaltz have had really nice success together this year. 3.26 expected goals for, 29 scoring chances for, 13 high danger. So their offensive numbers are pretty good. They should be able to win out that battle with the Kopitar line. As for the rest of this game, it looks pretty blah. LA 3 is absolutely atrocious defensively. So it would be nice to attack LA 3 a little bit, but the only way you can really do that is through Arizona 3. And I don't think anybody's overly excited about playing Derek Brassard, Lawson Krause, or John Hayden. I guess the one thing, though, that I would say is that it might not be the worst night to one-off Derek Brassard at 3,000. He's definitely a low-floor play. Doesn't shoot a whole lot, but he is 3,000. The matchup is definitely great, and he is on the top power play unit. So at $3,000, he looks like a pretty decent one-off option, but on a slate that has plenty of value, it might not be necessary. So yeah, Ottawa 1 ranking second in 5v5. Am I the only one that thinks Gustafsson can steal a game from Winnipeg tonight? No. I mean, the Jets are just – the problem for me is I don't like playing the Senators when they're on the road. They're not that good on the road. They're a very good home ice team, but on the road they suck. And the Jets top 6 is amazing. So, I could he steal one? Sure. But just on the road, I don't see it happening. I like Winnipeg 1 a lot tonight. And again, I did mention that Ottawa 1's ranking at the top or at second there is a little bit more to do with the Jets' underlying numbers struggle defensively, but they still have to beat Connor Hellebuck, right? So I don't love Ottawa tonight. They look okay, but they just don't win on the road enough. Vinny says, the page you had on screen, where do I find it? Did you build that page yourself? Yeah, you have to become a DFO premium subscriber. You can do that for as little as you can do it right here. If you go to Go Premium, you can do it for as little as $9.99 for a week, $19.99 for the month. You also get to join our Discord channel and we talk DFS in there all day long. Any late breaking news, any lineup changes and warmups, I break in the Discord channel, so you guys have time to alter your lineups. But yeah, it's you can get it for free here on the DFO DFS show, but it's available much later in the day. You can get it much earlier in the day by becoming a DFO premium subscriber. Joey says, am I the only one? Oh, well, he wrote that twice. And then, is it dumb to play McKinnon as a one-off and go Talbot? I mean, yeah, I never play my goalie against my players unless it's like the smallest slate ever. So yeah, I think it's a little dumb. But I mean, if he scores 1 goal on 8 shots and Talbot stops 35 of 36 and wins the game, then yeah, I mean, obviously it would work out. But chances are, playing a goalie against your players just limits the upside. It's not really the smart thing to do, but I wouldn't typically do it. But anyways, let's take a look again just quickly at the goaltenders. So Jack Campbell grades out the best tonight. Vegas really likes him. 4th best odds of winning in terms of the expected shot volume, about middle of the pack, a little bit below average. And then in terms of the expected goals against, 5th. So all things working together, then he's obviously got a pretty good save percentage. So all things, working out to him being the number 1 goalie on the slate. But again, I am a little nervous about the fact that he's unconfirmed. So, it's hard to. I wouldn't play Jack Campbell unless you are prepared to start whoever else starts instead of him, or start somebody from that Arizona LA game. Like I would go into it with that mindset. Like, don't start Jack Campbell and then he ends up not playing, and then you're like freak out that he didn't play, right? Like you have to be prepared that it was just weird how everything was worded. I've been doing this for long enough to know that like when something's in the air, it feels weird. Maybe they're just trying to see, how he feels this afternoon. But they're being very cautious with him. So I do expect him to play. I would put it at 56% that he starts tonight, but just be prepared if you are going to play him. Connor Hellebuck looks really good. Vegas obviously loves their chances to beat the Senators tonight, the best odds on the entire slate. In terms of the shot volume, it should still be really, really strong because the Senators, they don't score a ton, but they do shoot a ton. In terms of the expected goals against, it's obviously 3rd highest on the entire slate because, again, the Jets aren't very good defensively. But he is Connor Hellebuck. He can overcome that, so that's why he looks so good on the goalie model tonight. Philip Grubauer looks solid. Obviously, with him, the concern is always shot volume, so I don't love it. But there's a whole lot of question marks on this slate. Normally, I wouldn't go with Grubauer, but he looks a little bit better. Like I trust him a little bit more than Daniel Vlader at 8,100. Robin Lehner, he's had his fair share of. I guess Vegas has just kind of had their fair share of struggles, but I think I would probably play Lehner over Vlader, even though he grades out a little bit better. And then the value tonight is probably Cam Talbot if you're fading Colorado. And then, yeah, like whoever you like from that Arizona game. To me, I prefer Aiden Hill, but him starting on the back-to-back is a little risky. Cal Peterson's been sensational, so I like him at 7,700 too. So just kind of depends on who you're playing. But Campbell and Hellebuck look to me as by far the 2 best options. Hellebuck is unquestionably the best in my opinion tonight. So if you can fit him at 8,400, I think he's an outstanding play. Hellebuck is the 7th most expensive on the slate below Price and Smith. I'm locking him in on FanDuel. Yeah. Oh my God. 100%. Peter B says DK has Campbell as playing. Yeah. I mean, they on more than anything, they literally just listen to Daily Face Off, to be honest with you. So I would never trust like what they have going. It's, Daily Face Off is the best tool for that. I mean, if I put a defenseman at wing, a couple days later on DraftKings, he's a winger. So they're not like the front runners of knowledge for that kind of stuff. They kind of just scrape other sites and stuff. So I do expect them to play based on what happened in the morningscape, but it was just weird they didn't outright come and say that he was playing. So that's why I'm just saying be cautious if you did. So yeah. And then just to quickly go back to 5v5 score here for the overall scores, that's what they look like. In terms of the defense tonight, there are a number of reasonable options. I really like Alex Pietrangelo. Obviously, he's the most expensive defenseman. It's easy to say that, but there's a lot to like there. If you are playing Philadelphia, Provorov still looks really, really solid. He's been outstanding as of late. But relatively mediocre. I do like Morgan Riley tonight, 5,000. He, that price is far too cheap for what he offers. And I do like the Leafs quite a bit tonight. Shea Weber looks amazing at 5,200 just because he fits so perfectly with Montreal 3. So I'm going to have a ton of Shea Weber tonight with Montreal 3, no doubt about it. Matt Grzelcyk, 4,800, very good price for him. Pairs very well with either one of those top two Boston lines. Toronto 2, if you can't fit Morgan Riley or whatever, I like Jake Muzzin a lot at 4,300. He's a nice alternative option. If you're just looking for some salary relief, one-off plays, Vince Dunn's been about as consistent as you can be as of late. I don't like the Blues as a whole tonight, but Dunn as a one-off looks outstanding. The shot volume and shot blocking ability as of late has been just extremely reliable. He's just 3,900 on DraftKings. Matt Dumba is far too cheap at 3,400 for what he offers. Obviously, he hasn't had the greatest season, but for what you're getting, 22, 23 minutes a night at 3,400, Matt Dumba is really, really nice salary relief there. As we continue to move our way down the list, I do like Joel Edmondson if you can't fit like a Shea Weber, or if you're just looking for a one-off defenseman under 3K. He's 3,000 exactly. He's been very reliable in terms of the shot volume and block shot volume as well. I do like him. If you want to go all the way to the bottom for a minimum price defenseman, my favorite is, where is he? Okay, I don't know where he is. He's not popping up, but it's Steven Kampfer of the Boston Bruins. Unfortunately, probably not going to get any power play time tonight with Jake DeBrusk returning to the lineup, but he did play 20 minutes on Saturday. He is in their top 4 right now at minimum price. He isn't a guy who shies away from shooting the puck, which is about as much as you could ask for from a minimum price defenseman. So there's a number of cheap D options. There's a number of cheap wingers, centers, a slate loaded with value, but also a slate that maybe the top lines, don't like. I'm just terrified. Like it's so hard to go against the top lines, obviously, but and like I'm definitely going to play them a little bit, but I do think there's some concerns with all 3 of them tonight and just slightly difficult matchups. So maybe this is a night to get off the chalk a little bit, and hopefully it works. But also, whenever you do that, it's a quick ticket to just losing a shitload of money. So it's obviously risky, but it's a chance you got to take if you want to win these GPPs. And I think tonight is a pretty decent night to do that. You are showing forwards and talking about Ds. Yeah, I don't have a D tool on the Google Sheets, so I'm just looking on my end through my defenseman. And then I'm just leaving that up so you guys can study it. But yeah, I don't have a defensive tool right now, so nothing on this Google Sheets for picking defensemen. Favorite line on the slate is Winnipeg 1. Probably, yeah, like Winnipeg 1 I absolutely love. I love Vegas 2 as well. I just love what you're getting from them in terms of price. Toronto 2 I love. And in terms of value, it doesn't get any better than Montreal 3 tonight. Chris Russell, yeah, I mean, I have a hard time playing Chris Russell, but he's a shot blocking machine, so he's fine too. He's 2,700. Chris Russell sucks, but he is a shot blocking machine. And if there's a matchup where you're going to get plenty of opportunities to block shots, it's against Montreal. So Chris Russell is fine. He makes sense at 2,700 for sure. Block shot bonus 4 out of the last 6 games, 2,700. Yeah. No, he's a shot blocking machine. It's the only thing he's good at. He's bad defensively, so he's always his own end. And against Montreal, he should see plenty of opportunities to block shots tonight. Which 4 would you leave off if you're playing Toronto 2 or Montreal 3 lines? If I'm playing Toronto 2, I would leave off Galchenyuk. I mean, obviously you lose a little bit of the salary relief. If I had to leave one off, it would be Galchenyuk. And if I was leaving one off of Montreal 3, I think it would just have to be Drouin. I would like to say Eric Stahl probably. Like he would be my first choice. Honestly, would be Eric Stahl. But he's 2,500, so it's like hard to do. But Drouin has looked a lot better lately, and his shot volume's way up. He came out today and said that it's not acceptable for me to only have 2 goals in the year, so he knows he's feeling it a little bit. So he's been shooting more. So I like Drouin a little bit more than I did earlier in the year, but I mean it's hard to sit Eric Stahl when he's minimum price. So to me, it would be Drouin if I had to leave either one of those guys off. But all right, coming up on 50 minutes here. So that is going to do it for today's DFS show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please smash that like button on your way out. Helps a lot on YouTube, obviously. And then I think I've already posted. So hit that reminder bell or notification bell on YouTube so you don't miss tomorrow's show. But again, today's show was brought to you by my friends at Jock Market. If you're an American citizen, please check them out. And hopefully they will be available in Canada real soon. But yeah, thank you so much. Hit the smash the like button on the way out. We'll see you guys back here, same time, same place for Tuesday slate, and it's a big one. So see you guys tomorrow. Hopefully you return with more money in your bankroll than you have today. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you tomorrow.